This taxi driver had been working for 40 years, and one night, he picked up an alpaca passenger. While chatting with her, he learned that Miss Alpaca already had someone she liked. Odakawa was curious and asked if she had a photo. To his surprise, she handed him her phone, and on it was a photo of Odakawa himself. Odakawa couldn't believe it. He thought Miss Alpaca was joking. He quickly changed the subject, asking if she had any regrets. The answer Odakawa was hoping for was that Miss Alpaca regretted playing this joke on him. But Miss Alpaca seriously told him that she regretted taking out a student loan in college. Back then, she was too stubborn and didn't want to rely on her parents, but now, she thought relying on them was the right thing to do. After saying this, Miss Alpaca looked out the window and began to reflect. Odakawa didn't ask further questions and quickly wrapped up the trip. He didn't dislike Miss Alpaca. Any normal man would like her. She was gentle, beautiful, and graceful. Odakawa just felt he wasn't good enough for her. Just then, an escaped baboon hopped into Odakawa's taxi, pulled out a gun, and threatened Odakawa, demanding that he help find the missing high school girl. Odakawa wasn't afraid of death, but when the baboon mentioned Miss Alpaca's name, Odakawa had no choice but to agree to help. The baboon was satisfied and left, but Odakawa couldn't understand why the baboon knew about Miss Alpaca. At that moment, Miss Alpaca suddenly sent Odakawa a message, saying she was waiting for him at the park ahead. Odakawa, fearing the baboon might find Miss Alpaca and something might happen to her, floored the car, speeding towards the park. He didn't notice that he bumped into a pedestrian, who, unbeknownst to Odakawa, would cause trouble later. Odakawa didn't realize the consequences, and he kept driving until he reached Miss Alpaca. Luckily, she was fine. Odakawa was curious why she had come to see him, and Miss Alpaca simply wanted to meet him. Odakawa felt speechless, and they sat on a park bench. He was still anxious, and Miss Alpaca tried to make conversation, talking about many things in her life. Odakawa listened for a long time until he couldn't hold it in anymore and told her that she was being targeted by the gang. He explained that the gang was dangerous and that they even knew his friends. To Odakawa's surprise, Miss Alpaca stood up and told him that she was practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Odakawa was shocked, thinking it was some kind of joke, like an Indian movie. Odakawa made fun of her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, thinking it was just a pretty technique with no real use. But Miss Alpaca, annoyed, immediately stood up and performed the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu move again. Her performance made Odakawa relax, but he still didn't believe that Miss Alpaca liked him. So, he asked her about her intentions. Miss Alpaca was confused by his question. Odakawa asked her what the point of meeting him was. Miss Alpaca asked if Odakawa thought she was annoying. She said that meeting occasionally and talking like this made her feel at ease. Odakawa wasn't trying to offend her, but when he took her back to the hospital last time, he overheard the director talking about the hospital frequently losing valuable medicines. He wanted to shut down the hospital to cover up the matter and use the time to find a cure for his brain illness. However, Odakawa knew that the director was shutting down the hospital just to protect Miss Alpaca, and that the missing medicines were all stolen by Miss Alpaca, with the money going to the baboon. That's why Odakawa began to suspect Miss Alpaca's motives for getting close to him. He feared that everything was a trap orchestrated by the baboon. He didn't know if he was just imagining things, so he told Miss Alpaca not to come near him. But a few days later, Miss Alpaca came to him again. She was hurt by Odakawa's words and asked what he meant by not wanting her to come near him. Odakawa didn't want to explain, but Miss Alpaca raised her voice, nearly alarming the neighbors. Odakawa had no choice but to take her to the park. He remained indifferent and just mentioned the baboon's name. Miss Alpaca immediately understood everything.